back with Kingdom Death. We're doing a little speed painting video here of one of the Pinup survivors. Again, I think from collection number 2 or 4. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember. But this is a great model. I really like the pose, the behind the back spear. There's plenty of different tones, skins, furs, everything to play around with. As always, we're layering up the skin here first, just because I always say you start with something that you really like doing, and it motivates you to finish the rest of the piece after. But layering up here with the first layer of a skin tone mixed with a deep red. It's about 50-50-ish. I want the end result to be quite a natural looking skin color, but in like a gloomy environment. So the second layer of skin is going on here, as you can see, just layering up now the higher points, keeping the especially on the like the thighs, the bust, everything like that, keeping in mind that the oval profile of kind of combine those two words there, the oval profile of like the thighs, the bust, like everything is ovals and cylinders here, right? Like the curvaceous models that they make here, keeping in mind that you're going to be highlighting in those shapes as well. I do a little bit of like sketching and highlighting here just all over the model, but you're keeping in mind that the soft curves of the model have to be represented in your highlights as you layer up too. I'm adding progressively more of the skin tone that I started with into the red and skin mix. I just find that that gives starting with that red and skin mix and then gradually layering up with more skin keeps that natural pinkish hue of like real skin. And then the final layer that I will be doing will actually add in almost a pure white. But I use very, very little of that, and it'll only be on the most raised areas. But as you can see here, we're just going through layering up all the skin. I like doing the skin first as well, because then you can essentially be as messy as you want, hitting the other areas around there, because we're going to paint over them. And then it's a usual thing of starting with the darkest colors and going up to the light ones, as they're easier to touch up if you make a mistake. But as you can see here, getting into the more fine detail, I'm switching over now onto slow-mo here, just for slow-mo real time, onto the abdominal highlights that you see there. And you see I'm keeping like a natural contour to those, like that abdominal area. She doesn't have like a chiseled six-pack. She's just got the standard definition that you see there on the model. So it's actually quite important that these are soft flowing lines. And you can see there, I start with a sketch and then soften it up as we keep going. Now, you'll also notice if you're painting skin like this, that highlights when you're layering them will appear quite harsh. If you've mixed the paint properly, they'll appear harsh, and then they will dry and they will blend in really well. We do some layering and blending just with some watered down stuff in between the layers to tie them together. But you'll also notice that even at the end, after we've finished all the skin, with everything else still in a base coat, it's not really going to pop, because this skin color is very much a friend of contrast. So as you paint the more vibrant parts of the model and the other things around there, the hair, the boots, the fur, everything like that, you're going to notice that the skin color that you put so much effort into actually starts to really pop. You can see me now layering up finer and finer layers, and you're seeing that I'm maintaining sort of a really... as I said, smooth brush strokes here. I'm also switched over to, for this finer detail, a Kolinsky sable brush. Bougie as hell, I know. But just for that finer tip that it is able to keep, and the well of paint that it's able to keep there as well. But largely, I will use synthetic brushes. And I paint almost everything with synthetics. Not the best painter in the world, but you can do a lot with synthetics. You don't need to pay like $100 for a paintbrush. Kolinsky sable is nice though. The springiness of the bristles is fantastic, and it really keeps a natural point well. But you can see here, just layering up the last 2 layers of the skin there, I will be doing really sort of sparingly on the details. You can see here the contrast to where we were before. Now I'm just going with the extreme raised areas, but I'm trying to keep that smooth arcing motion. As I said, if you've got a figure with a lot of smooth curves on the actual like bodice of the figure, you want to keep that in mind with your highlight style. It looks ridiculous if you have like sharp lines or just pure sketching in on any of these. And you'll notice there, as I'm layering right now, the highlights appear quite sharp. Like there's a big difference between them. And you'll notice as we keep going here that difference actually subsides. So We're almost at the level here where we finish the skin, and we're going to go on to now all the leather and stuff like that around any of the I'm doing two main colors of leather, one with this sort of khaki color there, and the other is going to be just a traditional brown. The pouches are going to be in that khaki, the brown is going to be the leather on the van braces and all that sort of stuff. There's a bit of metal on this figure as well, and I'm going to be painting the metallics quite carefully, because metallics are actually really fucking annoying to like remove from anywhere if you accidentally fuck up. The spear is quite simple. It is just a wooden shaft with a metal spear. And as you can see here, I'm picking out all the details. I'm just going really quickly, lightning round through all this detail picking out here. But as always, the full detailed video is, and let me tell you, a real page turner unless you're really into painting. But the full detail is on the Patreon for anyone interested. I'm about to move into, after doing the two different types of browns, I like sort of sectioning out, like if I'm coating things, I like doing the browns, etc. all at once. I'm about to start moving into some of the other details here. I had to do a couple of layers on that khaki because it was absolute trash for coverage over black, which is fine. But I ended up having to do about 3 layers to get it to take. I've moved on to her hair here. Now, I'm a sucker for painting red hair, sue me, but I'm going to be doing a really deep crimson and then layering it up with about 3 different layers on the highlight of the hair. Now, I also slipped in here, while I've got the red out, I'm doing another converted model there that you see. That'll be in a later video, but I am doing that at the same time to not waste paint. Great tip there, I did the skin on that model as well, just while I had the paint out and I had a nice mixture of it. I'm going to be doing any of the boots and stuff like that, all of the metal on the boots, all that kind of thing. I'm going to start with a very, very grungy looking metal, and I'm only going to do a single sort of darker ink wash over it, get it as grimy looking as possible, and then one highlight. I don't want the metal to pop very much because we got to consider the environment that this model is actually in, the environment being like the worst possible place ever in Kingdom Death. After I've actually done the base for a lot of these colors, I'm going to be doing, over the browns and the metals, I'm going to be doing a simple black ink wash. You can do that from any sort of provider. I'm also going to be putting a light tan color over the areas I'm going to be painting white, because we don't want to paint white directly over black unless you want to paint like 16 layers. So it's just easier to get something with a bit more pigment on there first, as you see me doing here with the fur. The mask on her head and everything like that is going to be White Lion, which is a creature in this that I'll be emulating the fur of. You can see there as well, I put one highlight through the hair at the moment. There's going to be a couple of those. But what you should notice here is that we are really starting to pop. The skin is actually really starting to come up now that I've got some lighter colors. Like I said at the very start, that skin will only really come into its own once we bring the actual color out of the rest of the piece. It's just due to how your eyes actually perceive color. And that's something I know only in theory because I'm horrendously colorblind, but even I can notice that. With the tan or the light tan here over the fur, it's quite easy to just sort of go, oh, well, I can just, do one coat here. Do a couple of thin coats, because as you layer up to white is notoriously chalky to work with. It's actually like, I try to avoid using pure white whenever I can. So if it's already going to be like chalky, don't make chunky shit underneath it to really catch all that chalkiness. So that's what you see me doing there. Now, there's going to be I did the same on the lantern. The lantern hanging off her weapon is going to have a white base layer, and then I'm going to put a glow effect on there. The lantern, I don't want it to be overbearingly like bright, so even with the white base layer, I will end up really layering a couple of layers of glow, or just doing one thick like glob of an effect paint there. I want it to be like a dim lantern, because as I said, I want her skin to sort of be dim as well. You see me just picking out the last of the fur here. She has like a shoulder plate up there that I've also done in some metal. Highlighting again, just like with the other metals. When you're highlighting metal, you've got to be a little bit sort of mindful of the fact that if you're doing NMM, this is completely different. But if you're doing just a simple metallic metal, you've still got to be mindful of the fact that metal right next to other metal will reflect light. So her 2 shin guards, for example, on the bottom there, I will highlight quite heavily in between, like right on the inside of both of her ankles and legs there, even though usually that's a place like on the skin where I didn't really highlight up too much at all. And that's because the metal will reflect light onto that other metal. So it's just a nice thing to keep in mind. It'll help you your painting seem more realistic. We're putting a little bit of, again, like a layering of a black ink over some of this tan stuff that I will be keeping as tan, and then I will just do a single highlight of the original color. So that's the simplest way to layer up, and it's what I do when I'm feeling really lazy. So rather than starting with a much darker color and layering myself up like I've done with most other things, listen, all right, I don't have infinite time, and this is, at the end, a game piece that I'm going to be doing. You will notice at some point coming up here as well, I'm going to be putting the basing material down, and that's because I'm waiting for some other things to dry. That's actually something I hate doing. It's very, very annoying to put the basing material down because then you can't interact with the base at all with your fingers because you get fucking texture paint on yourself and it sticks like a motherfucker. So do or do not do that. That's at your own discretion. I'm just currently mixing up and diluting some paints here in the background. Using a wet palette always. I mention this frequently, but if you don't have a wet palette, it sounds like one of those things that people are like, oh, a wet palette, it's going to change your painting life. It like actually unironically does. Even if you're a little bit like not a fan of thinning paints too much, it thins them a little bit for you so you get away with it more. Some of you chunky painting boys out there can actually get a decent result even with one kind of chunky coat if you use a wet palette and move the paint around properly. Not that I say that's a good thing, that's a terrible thing, but at least it will save you that without changing anything. The only thing you need is a half decent wet palette, and you can get them for like $10. You don't need an expensive one. Big wet palette though, don't skimp. Go like, even if you're making your own, go large. You'll thank me later. When you're blending a whole bunch of colors together, it's so much better. We're just hitting the whites now, so we're doing the highlight on all the areas there where we did a white paint. We did a little grey watered down wash to pick out the recesses, and now we're hitting the details on the fur and the helmet. After that, I'm going to do a little bit more on the lantern. I mix a little bit of the glow effect there with the metal color on the runs of the lantern that are sort of the struts going down the ridges there. And that'll finish up everything. Now, I know I didn't do the base on camera, but you'll see it in the thumbnail anyway. I did the eyes and I did the straps on the bikini. You guys were on me about that in my last painting videos, but there we go, all finished up, ready for a probably to die immediately in my next Kingdom Death campaign, I'm not going to lie.